my first question to you is, who are you?
It's a question that can be answered in many different ways, and I like to, when we talk about, non-dual teachings, it can be very elusive to also constantly refer to ourselves as that, but I like to be free in my language. So because I like to look at it in different ways. Right now, I appear to be a person, sitting in a room and having a conversation. And that's completely fine too. That is what I appear to be. For me, self-inquiry is about discovering what I truly am in essence. I see what I appear to be, but I also see that what I appear to be is a constantly changeful image. Like throughout our life, we constantly see what we appear to be, from what we call the physical level to even the subtlest aspect of what I identify with, what I appear to be, like the personality, the self-image. Even these appearances are so changeful and there's no stability in it. So I appear to be this personal, changeful thing, Inquiry to me was always about discovering what I am in a truer sense of the word, right? What is it that is actually here? Well, when we look, it's first a discovery of like what I am not. Instead of like the question, who am I, pointing us to what I am, it's almost like first it's like an uncovering of all the things that I am not. So it's more easy to say what I am not than what I really am. And as we start to do this discarding process of what I am not, the more and more I come to this seeing of I don't know what I am. I only know the one fact that I can be sure of, which is I am. My amness, my beingness cannot be questioned, because even to question my being, I must first be. So I think instead of saying this is what I am, I think it's even more right to say I am, but I do not know that which I am. Mm-hmm. That would be a more accurate statement, On a personal level, of course, I'm this person frolicking around in the world, trying to do this and having these conversations. But we start to see that this is what I appear to be. This is, you can call it me in the phenomenal appearance. There's nothing wrong with that. But when we talk about our essence, it's more right to say, I don't know what I am. And I think that's the attitude we have to have with inquiry, not needing to identify what I am, not needing to objectify or label or name or have even any description or idea of what I am. So oftentimes in these non-dual teachings, sometimes when we become familiar with these concepts like I am awareness, or I am that absolute self or being, we start to, a trap that we fall into is we create an image of that and we start to pursue that image. We create an idea of it based on what we have heard from other people and like their experience, right? We have a concept of that and we start to pursue that. We say, I am this higher self or absolute self, and I'm pursuing that through spiritual practice. Through our meditation, and that's okay in the beginning, but through our inquiry and meditation practice, we have to start to discover the futility of that. That like, actually to have any idea of what I am would be doing a disservice to this practice. It's better to conduct the practice with absolutely no notion, no concept of what I am. In fact, we have to get comfortable with being, but not being a someone. We have to get comfortable with being and not knowing as what am I here for a little while, So as, we're discovering our being, and we're seeing that which I am cannot be named, cannot be really objectified or classified with some sort of quality or label or agenda. Or it's better to actually stay in the absence of concepts, absence of descriptions, than to necessarily say, this I am. But through our practice, we're definitely discovering that which I am is not here phenomenally, is not here. It does not come into existence, because everything that comes into existence, it appears to me and then disappears. But that which I am doesn't seem to be appearing. And if it is to appear, then who would know it? I am that which knows. So that would be enough to say, I am that which knows. I am that which is. Call it the unknown. I don't think it's any right to go further than saying unknown, because even if you say I am the source of all of this, because even that could become a concept and steer us once again back into conceptual reality. It's good to stay in the mystery. I think the most beneficial thing for self-inquiry is to remain in the mystery, this curiosity. The greatest mystery is the self, Everything else appears to us, but the self that knows, we really don't know. But I know that I am that. So with that conviction, we continue the practice with no description, no label. Yeah. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And you went straight into the second question also. You weave them together, because the second question is, what are you? And you moved between the who and the what in a very clear way, I would say. So the third question is, what is another?
Yeah. I think the concept of another arises when I identify myself also as something, So I like to give the example of the space of this room. I always refer to, I try to, when I explain this, I try to conceptualize and sort of paint an image out, even though, of course, the image isn't to be clinged to, but it sort of shares what this question is about. The space of this room has absolutely no relationship to the objects in the room. And what I mean by that is all the objects that are in this room, and you could just take a look in the room that you sit in, it is, full of objects of many different sizes, shapes, qualities, names, functions, and only objects relate to one another. The space of this room has no relationship with any object in particular. The space of this room is the total allowance of the objects in this room. The space, like in the space of this room, we could put a pile of gold, and we could also put a pile of garbage. The space of this room is absolutely free from all notions of good, bad, right, wrong. It doesn't have anything to gain from the gold, and it doesn't have anything to lose from the garbage. It has no notion of clinging to the gold or resisting the garbage. The space of this room is the pure allowance of both the objects of gold and garbage, So the space of this room, without the space, the objects also wouldn't be, In order for the garbage or gold to be in the space of this room, first the space must be. Yet the space is inherently free from any relationship with the objects. It does not identify with any position. It is incapable of preference or resistance. It is incapable of conceptualizing. Only when there's an identification of one's being with a particular object, whether that be, even a thought, a belief, whatever it is, then we sort of become that. And once we have identified with a position that takes on subjectivity, that takes on our beingness, our selfhood, our I-ness, now there's another. So I think it's very good for us to not reject that on the personal level, you know, convening with others or going about this personal life. It is totally okay that we understand that, okay, you know, you're living from the personal self, and that's fine, having relationships with others and other things and objects. However, that is on a superficial level. That is on the level of appearance. Relationship and I and other are only on the relative level of appearance. And nothing wrong with that, but we have to start to see beyond that. We have to start to discover our being. When I say our being, is like we're not referring to something mystical or something in another dimension. We're referring to that which I feel as self right now. You know, we have to, we're talking about like that which we feel as myself right now, that which I feel as true, like now. We have to start to discover that is not emanating from any particular object. Not the body, not the thoughts, not the ideas that thoughts are painting. You know, actually in that beingness, all these objects are arising. But we have to discover that my selfhood, my selfness, my beingness is not any of these objects. That it is almost like the space of this room, which itself is nothing, you know, like the space of this room that isn't here as something. You can't point anywhere particularly in this room and say that's where space is. It's not in any particular point. Yet actually anywhere you point, there's space. So it's not really itself appearing as an object, yet without it, there's no objects. And ultimately, if we are to go one step further, all the objects that are appearing in this space are made up of nothing other than space, because like there's no other material out of which they are made, you know, like all objects, of course we can say, oh, this one is made out of wood and this and that, but like even those materials have no existence apart from the space in which they exist. All the elements that they are made of, like the objects are made of, have no reality apart from the space in which they exist. So that's like a physical example, but like we have to discover that about our being, that which I feel as self, that which knows this experience here and now, is very much like that, the space of this room, which itself is not here as anything in particular. Yet it is that because of which everything that is appearing appears to be, because of which everything may appear. And everything that is appearing is made up of nothing other than that which is not itself appearing. Just lastly, I always like to also give the example of silence and sound. You know, all sound appears or arises from silence and subsides right back into silence. It has very momentary existence. Silence is, and sound appears. The moment sound appears, it also disappears. Even if you are, you know, just to listen to my voice, the moment it arises, it also vanishes. Silence is like the space in which sound appears and disappears. It appears to exist, but its existence is borrowed from the silence from which it arises, and it is very temporary. It has no beingness. It only appears to have beingness for a moment. So silence is very much, again, like the beingness, which is like just total potential. It doesn't exist as anything, yet it is the total potential of all that could momentarily exist. And everything that we know, everything that we are aware of, including the body, including the mind, including everything that is appearing, is like that possibility that momentarily appears and eventually disappears moment by moment. And our beingness is like that infinite potentiality out of which this appears and one into which it again subsides. So our inquiry practice brings us to that recognition, because we start to see that, right? As I said in the first question that you asked, that like, I am present, I am here, yet I am not here as any particular thing. Like we start to clearly discover that. And then these other like discoveries come because of that seeing, you know? So not holding any description of myself, I must simply be as I am. And that is the doorway to wisdom. That is the doorway to discovering my true being. You know, like the main teaching on Sri Ramana Maharshi's books, Sri Ramana Maharshi's teachings, the main book on it's titled Be As You Are. Of course, there's the book Who Am I? But like the more in-depth view of his teachings, that book is titled Be As You Are. That's really what self-inquiry boils down to. Simply being without any concept or any notion of I am this, I am that. Simply being as we are, we start to discover our true being, as opposed to being identified with what we are not. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What is life?
Again, a question that could be answered from many different perspectives, you know. From the personal perspective, life is just, you know, you are born in a world, and there's the span of many ups and downs, successes and failures, pleasure and pain, this journey of doing things, and then, you know, you die and the world goes on. So from the personal perspective, that's life. Like, this is my life. Like, I am this person that has a life, and I have to do things in this life to become a greater person and hopefully avoid things that make me less of a person. So that's one perspective of what life is. But another, when we talk about spiritual practice, it's good to be very, very here and now with it. I don't know what life is, yet instead of needing a description for life or label or some sort of interpretation of or concept of what life is, once again, like, you know, bringing it into a concept, here and now, there is an aliveness to this experience. There is a animating quality here, because of which we feel like the contents of this moment are real. You know, like right now, this conversation and our interaction and like what is appearing in this moment seems to be real. But like soon these contents will shuffle around. Other contents will replace it. And then those contents will start to appear to be real. So what is that because of which the contents of this here and now feel so real? Life is nowhere over there or in some subtler dimension or even deep within us. Life is literally that which we currently feel or sense as true, as aliveness, as beingness, as presence, as being awake. You know, so that allows us to not conceptualize what life is, but rather it allows us to experience life. Or even in a more accurate way of putting it, it allows, when we start to pay attention to that, it allows us to be life. Not even be one with life, but be life. That's the beautiful part about self-inquiry, which resonated with me so much, is that it always points to here and now. You know, it points to the self here and now. It points to life here and now. It points to being here and now. And in order to pay attention to that, what we call like, turning inward, in order to really pay attention to, or in other words, notice our aliveness, our beingness, our awakeness, awareness, we have to drop all conceptualizing. The moment conceptualizing begins, once again, we have turned our gaze away from the noticing of this aliveness, and we have reduced it into like a conceptual prison. And we're like, now it's funny because like the concept that arises borrows its momentary existence from this life, which is always here and now, but we get hypnotized into that perspective, into that concept, from where we start to live only in ideas. So this practice is so beautiful because like it brings us back to ourselves, or in other words, like to notice the life that always is here. It is literally what we like. What does the word here refer to? Not like location wise inside of space, but like no matter where you go inside of space, like in the world or even in space, like outside of this world, like it will always be here. There's something that we feel always as here. There's something that we always feel as now. No matter where we go, no matter whether we're having a good experience or bad experience, no matter if the body is very healthy or ill, no matter if I'm successful or failing in this moment, no matter if I'm feeling good or bad, we always feel like I'm here and I'm alive. We always feel like it's the now. So these words like presence, being, now, self, here, I, these are all words pointing to the life that, because of which all appears. Life isn't anything in particular here. It's not these words. It's not these lights. It's not these objects. It's not these thoughts. It is that animating quality which makes all of these things appear to be true and real, which makes this experience possible. And with self-inquiry, it's very important to not create ideas about that, but rather to really experience it and to be it. And then we start to see that actually all these objects which appear to be life, appear to be real, they have no existence apart from that invisible essence that because of which they feel so real, So that animating quality, it only is waiting for our noticing. We don't have to search it or seek it. We just have to become aware of it. We have to notice it. Right now, this life is, even if you don't do any spiritual practice, it's not like this life is not here. Like it's not like you're no longer alive, but it's just that we get hypnotized in concepts, in thoughts. So this is about just returning to the noticing. So it's like, rather than being dormant, this life and this awareness is totally dormant in a state of sort of like hypnosis, identification, giving reality to objects. We're noticing that awareness, and it's going from dormant state to like awake, unidentified, just totally unconditioned. We're discovering our unconditional being / life. So yeah, that's the way I like to put it. Sorry if I rambled a little.
Thank you so much, Sunny.
Yeah, absolutely. I also, when talking about these teachings, I always like to just bring it back to the practice. A very common mistake, in a lot of the non-dual circles, is that sometimes we get too overly obsessed with concepts and engaging our imagination when talking about life or the self. Whereas any really helpful teaching always, of course, it introduces it to us, the intellectual concept, the teaching, helps us gain an understanding of why we are even practicing and what we are pursuing. But a really helpful teaching will be one that actually points us away from concepts to our very own life here and now, our very own being. So that's also like my goal with this work, to really just bring that element of practice and experience into this space of self-inquiry and non-duality. Yeah, because I think that's ultimately what is helpful.
Yes, and you can call it rambling if you want, but you took me on a very experiential journey through this. So thank you
Very
so
happy.
much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.